Have you ever wondered why you still feel like something's missing even when you already have so much? Why money seems to come and go while you keep struggling with everyday spending decisions? Maybe the problem isn't how much you earn. Maybe it's how you approach life and how you define what it means to have enough. In a world filled with ads, discounts, and constant temptations to buy, spending has become a reflex rather than a conscious choice. We shop because it's cheap, because someone told us we needed it, or simply because we feel empty. But then that item quickly becomes part of the silent clutter, collecting dust in our homes. Meanwhile, in Japan, there's a group of people choosing to live differently. They're not extreme savers. They don't reject comfort. They simply live with more intention. They understand that everything they allow into their lives should have a purpose. And that kind of thoughtful simplicity creates something remarkable. They spend less, but live more. They own fewer things, but feel more at ease. And surprisingly, they save more money. Not because they're stingy, but because they know exactly what they're doing with every dollar they spend. Every small habit, every daily choice, whether it's about meals, home decor, or shopping, builds a foundation for financial wellness that is both sustainable and deeply fulfilling. Today I'm going to share with you 7 minimalist principles from Japan, not just to help you save up to $5,000 a year, but to completely transform how you live, spend, and enjoy life. These aren't quick tips. They're a journey into a simpler, smarter, and truly freer way of living. Are you ready to begin this journey with me? 1. Danshari. The principle of refuse, dispose, separate. Sometimes it's not life's busyness that truly wears us down, but the sheer excess around us. Too many belongings, too much noise, too many small distractions constantly pulling at our focus until our minds feel like they can't breathe. And perhaps, in the midst of all that overwhelm, the Japanese gave us a quiet gift, a spiritual philosophy known as Danshari. Danshari is not just a method of tidying up. It's a healing journey, a gentle reminder that you deserve to live more simply, more lightly, and more meaningfully just by letting go of what no longer fits who you are. The word Danshari is made up of 3 Japanese characters: Dan, to refuse; sha, to discard; and ri, to separate. Each character represents a small step, but together they form a graceful philosophy that helps you release not only physical clutter from your space, but emotional weight from your heart. Dan means to refuse. In a world where advertisements and consumerism are ever present, saying no is a quiet act of courage. Refusing is not about deprivation, it's about awareness. It's when you pause and ask yourself, do I really need this? Will this make my life lighter or just heavier? Refusing is the first step to preventing clutter from entering your life in the first place. Sha means to discard. This is where you gently open that overstuffed closet, look at each item, and have an honest conversation with yourself. When was the last time I actually used this? Why am I still holding on to it? Not everything you own deserves space in your home or in your mind. Letting go of what no longer serves you is like saying goodbye to a former version of yourself with respect and gratitude. And then comes rai, to separate. This is perhaps the most difficult step, but also the most profound. Because it's not just about things, it's about emotions. It's about the invisible threads that tie you to objects that once represented a memory, a moment, a version of who you used to be. But if you hold on to everything, how will you make room for what's to come? Separation doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring the past while choosing to live fully in the present. As you begin to practice Danshari, you'll notice something almost magical. You're not just cleaning your home, you're clearing your mind. A sense of lightness will begin to spread. A quiet, open space will begin to appear. And in that space, you'll finally be able to hear something you may have forgotten, the inner voice that tells you what truly matters. Many people say that after embracing Danshari, it feels like they've been given a fresh start. They make better decisions, live more intentionally, and most importantly, they realize they need far less than they thought. Not because they lack anything, but because they've found a sense of fullness from within. Isn't it fascinating? A small philosophy, born from the simple observations of a Japanese woman, has now touched the lives of millions around the world. Because in the end, we're all searching for the same thing, a sense of peace in our everyday lives. and perhaps Danshari is one of the first doors that can gently lead you back to that peace. 2. Ma, the art of empty space. If Danshari teaches us how to let go of what no longer serves us, then Ma is the precious space that opens up in its place. A space that might seem silent at first glance, but within that silence, the deepest part of ourselves begins to speak. Ma in Japanese means interval or space, but it is not a void. It's a presence, a quiet, intentional presence. It's the pause between two notes in a melody, not interrupting the music, but giving it soul. It's the empty corner of a room, not lacking, but breathing. Ma is the art of stepping back, of doing nothing, so that everything else can become more meaningful. In Japanese culture, Ma can be found in every corner of life, in the empty walls that are left undecorated, in the quiet of a tea room, in the unspoken moment between two people who understand each other without words. It's the ultimate form of simplicity, unassuming, quiet, but profoundly deep. The beauty of Ma lies in the fact that it doesn't ask you to add more. Quite the opposite, it invites you to subtract. Fewer objects, less noise, less cluttered schedules. And in this subtraction, you begin to uncover a quiet space you may have forgotten you needed. Space to breathe, space to reflect, space to return to yourself. Ma is not cold or lifeless emptiness. It is a gentle invitation that says, pause, observe, feel. When you enter a space with Ma, you don't feel lack, you feel lightness. When you live in a schedule with Ma, you don't feel idle, you feel fully present, moment by moment. Many of us are used to living at a frantic pace, days crammed with back-to-back tasks, barely room to lift our heads. But imagine if you began to place true pauses into your day, not to scroll or distract, but to simply watch the clouds pass by, or close your eyes and notice your breath. That is Ma in time. And the miracle is this: the more Ma you create in your life, the more focused you become, the deeper you live, and the more you save energetically, emotionally, even financially. Ma doesn't force you into strict minimalism. It simply reminds you with kindness that sometimes it's the space between things that makes the rest meaningful. A painting is only beautiful because of the white space that surrounds it. A conversation only touches the heart when it allows for silence. A life only feels whole when we create pauses to breathe, to contemplate, to rest, to know where we are going. And in this healing journey of Japanese minimalism, Ma is a quiet yet powerful companion. It doesn't tell you what to do. It simply opens a door so you can witness the beauty of space. Space not meant to be filled, but to welcome you back to yourself gently and completely. 3. Tsukuru, the culture of make it yourself instead of buying. After learning how to let go of what we don't need and opening up space for stillness to enter, a new question begins to arise within us. What is truly worth keeping? And in that quiet moment of reflection, the Japanese offer us another gentle invitation. Tsukuru, a subtle reminder that the most beautiful things are often the ones you create with your own two hands. Tsukuru in Japanese means to make or to create, but it is so much more than just a verb. It is a way of living, a philosophy rooted in intention, self-reliance, and quiet devotion. It invites you not to buy, not to rely, but to craft, to put your hands, your time, and your heart into the things you need. Whether it's a meal, a gift, or something humble and homemade, Tsukuru honors not perfection, but presence. Just like kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, it teaches us to celebrate the cracks, the effort, the tenderness. Tsukuru is not only found in traditional craft villages or among skilled artisans. It lives in the everyday and the small, quiet acts of care. When you choose to cook a meal with simple ingredients, when you stitch a tear in your clothes instead of throwing them away, when you create something by hand and give it to someone you love. In each of these moments, you're not just saving money, you're tending to your spirit in a very personal way. Because when you make something yourself, you have to slow down. You have to pay attention. You have to listen, observe, feel. You step out of the cycle of mindless consumption and into a space of presence. Every action becomes a form of mindfulness. And in that space, a quiet joy begins to bloom, not because what you made is perfect or trendy, but because it carries you in it, your care, your patience, your time. Tsukuru also brings with it a quiet kind of freedom. When you realize you can create, you no longer need to chase after what's sold to you. You're no longer swayed so easily by trends because you understand that real value doesn't come from labels, it comes from connection. Creating something yourself is an act of reclaiming your agency, not just over objects, but over your own life. And the beautiful part is, you don't need to be crafty or talented to live with the spirit of Tsukuru. You just need to begin, slowly, gently, from wherever you are. Nothing is too small to be made with love. Even peeling an apple, cooking a bowl of soup, or writing a handwritten note when done with the heart of Tsukuru can become a quiet ritual of self-love. In today's world, where almost everything can be ordered with a single tap, choosing to make it yourself can feel like an act of quiet resistance, but it's a resistance wrapped in tenderness. It's a way of saying, I am enough. I don't need more. I just need to return back to my hands, my breath, my being, and remember what it feels like to create, not consume. Tsukuru doesn't teach you how to make more things. It teaches you to make less, but with more heart, so that everything you bring into the world isn't just something you use, but something that stays with you, an extension of who you are, a living piece of a life shaped with purpose, care, and quiet joy. 4. Motenai, the philosophy of avoiding waste. Once you've learned to slow down, to let go of the unnecessary, to embrace the stillness, and to craft with your own hands the little things that nourish your life, another question begins to quietly surface. Am I treating this life with enough reverence? And that is when the philosophy of Motenai softly enters. A small word in Japanese, yet it carries profound depth in both culture and soul. Motenai doesn't simply mean don't waste. It expresses a quiet sorrow, a sense of regret, not because we lack, but because something has not lived out its full worth. An item thrown away when it could still be useful. A meal left unfinished. A small tear in a garment leading to it being replaced rather than mended. These moments all whisper the spirit of Motenai, a reminder that everything holds value, and we have a responsibility to honor that. This philosophy is rooted in Buddhist and Shinto principles, where every form of existence, material or natural, is seen as sacred. In this worldview, even a pair of chopsticks, an old shirt, or a wilted vegetable deserves our gratitude, because each of these humble things carries within it time, effort, energy, not only from human hands, but from the earth itself. Motenai doesn't demand a life of deprivation or extreme frugality. It simply invites you to live more consciously, to pause before you buy something new, to repair before you replace, to use what you already have, fully and lovingly, before seeking more. When you begin to live with the spirit of Motenai, you realize that many of the things you once thought you needed were never truly essential. They were habits, reflexes, reactions to a world that constantly pushes us to consume. And as you slow down, something begins to shift within you. The urge to accumulate lessens. You begin to feel whole with what you already have. Every time you keep something a little longer, every time you breathe new life into what was once destined for the trash, you build a bridge, a quiet connection between yourself and the world around you. And in that connection, there is a deep, quiet joy. Because you know you are living with awareness, with care, and with compassion. Motenai doesn't just reduce waste, it softens the heart, it teaches gratitude. It teaches us that nothing is truly useless when we choose to see it through the lens of respect, and that life becomes richer not through accumulation, but through the way we care for and preserve the small, ordinary things around us. In a world overflowing with excess yet starved of connection, Motenai is a breath of clean, still air. It brings mindfulness into our thoughts, care into our hands, and a quiet sense of fulfillment into our hearts, not from what we own, but from the love and presence we bring into how we live. 5. Seasonal living, living in harmony with the seasons. Once you've learned to simplify, to preserve, and to create from the humble things around you, you begin to see the world differently. No longer rushed or overwhelmed by a busy calendar, your gaze softens more attuned to the quiet shifts in nature. And this is where seasonal living gently unfolds a way of life that's simple on the surface, yet deeply transformative beneath. Seasonal living is not a rigid rulebook, but rather a conscious state of being. It's about realizing that we don't need to separate ourselves from nature, we can live with it. It's about letting the rhythm of the natural world guide your own through the foods you choose, the way you use energy, or how you listen to your body and adjust your daily flow. The Japanese have lived this way for centuries, not because it's trendy, but because they've long understood that wisdom often lies in returning to what is closest. In spring, they welcome the cherry blossoms as a ritual of renewal. In summer, they celebrate with festivals under the stars, embracing the light and the buzzing of cicadas. In autumn, they slow down, taking in the shifting colors of the leaves like a quiet reflection on time. And when winter arrives, they turn inward, not only warming their homes, but also their spirits. This way of living offers more than just practical benefits like saving on food, reducing energy use, or making the most of what's available. It also brings with it a quiet sense of ease. When you live seasonally, you stop forcing yourself to keep up a constant artificial pace year-round. You allow yourself to shift, to rest, to begin again just as the earth does. And over time, you start to feel more connected. You notice the subtle signs, a cool breeze that hints at a changing season, the sudden abundance of a certain fruit, or even the way the afternoon light changes color. These seemingly ordinary moments become small sources of nourishment. Because you're no longer standing outside of nature, you're living within it, moment by moment. Seasonal living doesn't require a complete life overhaul. It begins with noticing, with asking yourself what your body needs this season, what your heart is longing for, and what the world around you is quietly saying. And then, bit by bit, you begin to live more deeply, more gently, more truthfully. And in doing so, you realize something simple yet profound. No season is without purpose. Each one brings its own gift. Spring carries hope. Summer brings vitality. Autumn invites reflection. Winter offers stillness. And when you allow yourself to move through all 4 seasons in this way, you're not just moving through a year, you're moving through a full cycle of healing. 6. 1 in, 1 out rule. The rule of 1 in, 1 out. After slowing down with the seasons, learning to cherish what you have, and saying no to wastefulness, something shifts in the way you see your surroundings. Space no longer feels like something that needs to be filled, it becomes something that needs to be protected. And from that awareness, a simple yet profound principle emerges, the 1 in, 1 out rule. At first glance, this rule might seem purely practical. For every new item you bring into your home, you let one existing item go. But at its heart, it's an invitation to live with intention, to enter into a conscious relationship with the things you own, to let every choice be a meaningful act, not just a reflex driven by momentary desire. This rule doesn't ask you to be strict with yourself. It simply offers you a way to keep balance between what comes in and what goes out, between the new and the old, between acquiring and releasing. Because without boundaries, accumulation creeps in quietly. Every little thing we keep, if we're not mindful, can begin to take up not only space in our rooms, but space in our minds. When you live by this principle, you start becoming more sensitive to your belongings. Each time you consider bringing something new into your life, you pause and ask, am I truly willing to let go of something else for this? That question alone reshapes your decision-making. It helps clarify what really matters to you right now. You begin to detach from the urge to hold on just in case. You stop keeping things for someday and start living with what supports you today. And what's beautiful is that over time, you begin to feel lighter, not just in your physical environment, but in your spirit. A room curated with just enough feels more breathable, more focused, more peaceful. It's like tending a garden. If you let every plant grow without care, sunlight can no longer reach the soil. But if you prune gently with intention, that same garden flourishes. The 1 in, 1 out rule reflects the quiet grace of Japanese minimalism. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand. It simply restores harmony in the most natural, humble way. It teaches you that to make space for something new, you must be brave enough to release the old. And that isn't loss, it's growth. When you live with this rule long enough, the act of buying no longer feels like an automatic source of happiness. Instead, you start to find joy in choosing well, in keeping what truly serves you, and in the freedom that comes when you're no longer weighed down by excess. That is the deeper beauty of the one in, one out rule. It doesn't just declutter your home, it clears your mind, sharpens your values, and gently frees your soul. 7. Kakeibo, the traditional Japanese budgeting system. And then, after everything you've let go of, everything you've preserved, everything you've remade, there remains one essential element to complete a truly sustainable minimalist lifestyle: money. Not as a goal to chase, but as a flow of energy that deserves to be understood, respected, and guided with intention. And the Japanese have a quiet, profound way of doing this. They call it kakeibo. Kakeibo, which translates to household finance ledger, is more than a budgeting tool. It's an art of living. Born over a century ago from the wisdom of Heini Motoko, Japan's first female journalist, it wasn't just a method for women to manage household finances. It was a seed of empowerment, a way to nurture independence, and more than anything, a path to understanding oneself through numbers on a page. With kakeibo, money isn't something to control with logic alone, it's something to connect with through the heart. You're not just writing down what you spend, you're asking yourself, why did I spend that? What emotion guided that decision? Does this serve the life I truly want to live? And when you repeat that process daily, something remarkable begins to unfold. You realize that money was never the problem. It's how you relate to it that makes the difference. Every dollar you spend becomes less of an impulse and more of a conscious choice. You start to notice the leaks expenses that keep showing up without bringing joy. And you rediscover forgotten dreams, the little ones that never had a space in your budget, simply because you hadn't made room for them. Kakeibo doesn't require you to be good at math, nor does it force you to cut back harshly. It simply asks you to make time just a little, each day, to return to yourself through one small act, writing things down, observing, reflecting, and asking, did I live today in alignment with what I truly value? Month by month, number by number, a quiet clarity begins to emerge. You no longer feel like a victim of your finances. You become the one guiding them. You begin to craft a life in which every expense reflects your real priorities. And slowly, saving money is no longer about cutting down. It becomes a journey of coming home to what really matters. Kakeibo is a habit, yes, but it's also a sacred daily ritual, a way to remind yourself again and again that you have the right to make conscious choices, to lead your money, your decisions, and your life. Not with noise, not with pressure, but with the quiet strength of ink on paper, carrying the deep awakening of someone who is truly paying attention. Now that we've reached the end of this journey through 7 principles of Japanese minimalism, take a moment to notice what's resonating in your heart. Maybe it's the spaciousness of Ma, the empowerment of Tsukuru, the grounding of Kakeibo. Maybe it's all of them. But here's the truth. You don't have to apply them all at once. Just start with one. One small step. One surface cleared. One meal cooked. One expense written down. These rules are not commandments, they are invitations. Invitations to simplify, to return to what matters, and to save not just money, but energy, attention, and peace. So, I'll leave you with this. What's one rule you'll try this week? Let me know in the comments. I read every one, and if this video helped you breathe a little easier or think a little deeper, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this space with someone you love. Until next time, live simply, live fully, and remember, sometimes the richest life is the one with the fewest things, but the clearest purpose.